I've built two buttons, and the animations are happening at the same time, which is not what we want. But I want to deliberately show you a few little things that can go wrong and how to move frames around. If you look up here, you'll notice that I have an action here and an action here. This was completely by mistake, and it will happen the odd time. When you're putting your actions in, you generally make sure you're on frame 1 in the timeline. So if we end up with an action here, this relates to the blue button. We can have a look at it here, and this is the action. It's telling us when it's clicked to go to play frame 2. Well, first of all, we don't need any of this grey stuff, right? We can take all the grey stuff out. Don't damage anything else, and make sure you keep the closing bracket, okay? So we can just take this out of here, Command X for cut, and we can come in here, okay? And we can go, excuse me, click on it once. You can go Window, Actions, and we can just paste that below everything else, not in the middle of it, but nice and below the closing bracket. And then you'll notice that the bracket that we have here, sorry, the keyframe we have up here, this keyframe is now empty, so it's harmless, and all the actions are in one place, so there'll be no messing around. It'll read all the action when it starts. So that's a nice little fix. Next thing we need to do is, rather than having, let's show you the preview here, rather than having it where we click on a button and the two animations play at the same time, okay, it's kind of useless. We want the blue to play the blue and the red to play the red. What we need to do is, first of all, we need to put the animations in different places. So the blue is coming up at the same time. So it's called animation 2. I think you can just about see it there. We're going to move animation 2, and we're going to put it starting, say, at frame 30. Okay? Now watch how we move that again, just to show you. Lots of different ways to move it. Handy ways to click on the first frame, shift click on the last frame, and then move it anywhere between those, grab it anywhere between those two frames, and you should be able to move things, okay? Don't worry about these little guys here. Once they're blank, it doesn't cause any trouble. So we know now this is starting in frame 30. We also know that we don't want our buttons to disappear. So button 2 is actually my blue button. So I'm going to insert a frame here, not a keyframe, just a frame. There's no animation, so we don't need a keyframe. The same with button 1. We don't want the blue button to disappear or the red button to disappear. Insert a frame. Okay? And then the last thing we have to do is deal with the action that's on the blue button, because that's telling it to go to frame 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this here. You can actually just go into the actions here too if you like. I'm going to go Window, Actions, and blue button, because I gave it a proper name. Go and play 2. Nope, we want to go and play 30. Thank you very much. Now it'll almost work. We've one thing left to do. Let me show you what it is. So here we are. The blue button will play the blue button, and it'll naturally return to the start, because when you run out of frames, it goes back to the start. The red button, unfortunately, will play both animations, red, then blue. Why? Because we've told the red button to go to frame 2, so it continues until it reaches the end of the timeline, and then it returns to the start until it hits the stop frame again. So what we need to do is we need to put a little frame in, saying when the red animation is over, go back to the start, which we're going to do right now. So we need to identify where the animation stops. So the red animation stops right there in frame 25. Okay, you can see the animation 1 coming to a stop there. So what we need to do is, after that animation, we need to tell it to go back to the start. So in frame 25, on the actions layer, so we don't get confused, we're going to insert a blank keyframe. Now with the actions window open, we're going to type the following command. Go to and play, open bracket, frame 1, semicolon. Okay, you'll notice this action has now gone into that keyframe, which means that when the playhead finishes the red animation, it'll send it back to play frame 1. Frame 1 has a stop, so it'll stop the animation there. Now, let's just check to see if it's all working for us. Red animation, back to the start. Blue animation, go back to the start without a return to the start, because it just runs out on the timeline.